Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley, and I am a machine learning program manager at Google.
And I'm Lawrence, and I'm a machine learning developer advocate at Google.
And we are both people of AI.
So join us as we meet some of the most interesting people in the field of machine learning and artificial intelligence.
You will meet leaders, practitioners, amateurs in the field of AI and ML, and how they ended up where they are today, what they have learned along the way, and their outlook on the future.
Sounds exciting. Shall we do it?
Let's jump right in. This podcast is sponsored by Google. Any remarks made by the speakers are their own and are not endorsed by Google. Welcome, everyone. We are so excited today to welcome Michelle Carney to our last episode of this season of People of AI. Michelle Carney is a computational neuroscientist turned user experience researcher, also known as UX researcher, whose practice focuses on the intersection of data science and user experience. Currently a senior UX researcher on Google's Tensorflow team, Michelle's projects focus on combining machine learning and UX for on-device machine learning like TensorFlow Lite, TensorFlow Micro, and TensorFlow JS. Some of her other work at Google includes the recently launched Visual Blocks for ML, check it out on Twitter, Magenta's Tone Transfer Project, and People plus AI Research, also known as PAIR, guidebook. Outside of work, Michelle teaches at the Stanford D.school on designing machine learning and is the organizer and founder of the Machine Learning and UX Meetup. Welcome, Michelle. We are so psyched to have you on the podcast today.
Oh my gosh, Ashley, I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I've been excited to have this conversation with you for a while now because we work closely together, and I'm such a fan and so inspired by the work that you do. And
oh my gosh, Ashley, I'm such a fan of yours. I'm so inspired by the work that you do.
Well, then this is the perfect platform to be able to exchange these ideas and to talk more about the work, especially that you do. But before we do that, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a senior UX researcher here at Google. I work on TensorFlow, as you mentioned, great introduction. But my background, I actually studied computational neuroscience. So computational neuroscience is understanding how the brain works, like neural networks and everything come from computational neuroscience, and trying to model that with computers.
So you are at really the intersection of AI and machine learning and sort of the technical infrastructure to build these products, these systems, and also you bring in the user experience. So you bring in that outside input from the users and you take the feedback from the users and inform what it is that you do. And it sounds to me like this cross-functional or cross-disciplinary role that you play. And I would love to know how you got into that. Like, what was little Michelle like? Like, did you first start in technology? Did you first start in user experience?
Oh my gosh, totally. By the way, can you follow me around and help explain what UX is to everyone? I love that. Yeah, sitting in the intersection and making sure we're building like the right thing for the right people. Yes. Okay, so little Michelle was obsessed with music, believe it or not. And I think that this has kind of helped define a lot of my path towards where I ended up today. And even my focus in like, I love auditory ML. I just think that that's so cool. So, I loved playing music. I was doing a lot of that even in high school, and I was working in a music store, and I started teaching in LA Unified, like an after school program on music. And I was
What were you teaching an instrument? Were you teaching music theory? Were you teaching
definitely not music theory.
Like okay. And also like, can you name like a favorite instrument? So just we get a visual or of like
a visual. Yeah. Yes. Visual. I started on clarinet, but I moved to bass clarinet, and I loved bass clarinet because it's kind of like a combination of a saxophone and a clarinet. It was very easy to be a big fish in a small pond when you play a very specialized instrument. So this is another reason why I got into like playing with like USC and UCLA and Disney Hall and Carnegie Hall because I was very good at playing this one very specific instrument. Yeah. So I loved playing music. And luckily, because I knew how to play woodwinds, it was very easy for me to start teaching beginning band. But honestly, like teaching music was such a great way for me to learn math and everything too, because I was playing all these different instruments. I guess I didn't realize it at the time, but I was learning all these math concepts and everything too, which I just became really fast at doing math in my head because I would be like, you just got to learn it really fast.
And I guess my only question is like, did you move forward with music or did you not? Or kind of where was the evolution from that point?
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Ashley, for asking me about all this. So, okay. What had happened was I was a high school student at the time. I'd worked in this music store for like 4 years, and I had just seen so many really amazing people a couple years older than me totally burn out on music. And I think that for me made me, someone had a really deep discussion with me about like, you could still play music and enjoy your life, but don't like when you have to do it every day, it becomes less of a joy. And that to me kind of made me start opening and expanding my horizons. And I am extremely fortunate that my mom is way cooler than me because she was teaching at Cal State Channel Islands at the time. She taught a class on like patent law for scientists or something. And she needed a TA, basically someone to run the students' abstracts of their papers through PubMed and just make sure they weren't plagiarizing already existing papers. And so I started doing that for her as like a help out my mom kind of thing.
Wow.
But one of her students was a protein crystallographer. And she's like, you're really smart. Do you want to intern in my lab for a summer? Like,
oh, wow.
I know. Like I seriously, her name is Twinkle, and I talk to her like on the reg too. And I'm like, I want you to know, like, I would not have the career that I have without you. But she believed in me and she's like, you are super smart. And if you're interested in science, you should just explore this. And so I actually got into protein crystallography, and actually by proxy, that's how I got into neuroscience, is because I was really interested then in proteins after working with her, because I'd like to say proteins are like the JavaScript of our body, because like, yeah, you can have HTML and CSS on the web, but like JavaScript makes everything exciting. Yeah, this is why I studied molecular cell biology at UC Berkeley. And then from there, they were like, oh, you are already doing modeling. Do you want to work on neural networks?
Wow, that's incredible. So if I were to sort of summarize it, you got into music and this love of music and rhythm, and then teaching it. And then you found common ground in studying neuroscience and sort of also studying, I guess, the patterns in the brain. And then in studying neuroscience and proteins and how to, I guess, ultimately how the brain functions and how it works and how the networks in the brain are all connected by chemicals, essentially, or proteins. And then moving into how people were building neural networks with machines. And so you have this trajectory of patterns, establishing how patterns develop, both from music, neurally, and then neural pathways and neural networks into machines and into machine learning. So yeah, now that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's a ton of pattern recognition. And I think there is an element, even though it is like a quote, like hard science, there is an element of creativity to it. Even with machine learning, there's all these design decisions that you're essentially making. Like, what are you tuning the model to? Why are you doing some certain thing? And so that's why it's both like a science and an art. And then actually building a product around it, like a cochlear implant algorithm or hearing aid algorithms, that's even more where you have to be like, wow, what am I actually filtering out as signal and what's noise? And like, this is going to be something that someone is using for what purpose, right? Like, is this something that they need to use daily to function? But like, you can imagine if you're building a cochlear implant or hearing aid for someone, they don't want car noise filtered out, right? They want to know when a car is coming. And so it's like, it's the same type of noise cancellation model or like signal processing model, but like just very different and very attuned to these people. And are there ways that they can customize it? All this stuff.
So we followed your journey into sort of the more technical route and becoming an expert on machine learning and neural networks. So I think two questions sort of sandwiched here together. The first is, I'd love to hear, I guess, and understand more about what UX is for our listeners who might not know much about it. And then how you got into that. Like what was there a defining moment or a project where you were like, you know what, this is a problem that needs to be solved. And I actually, instead of building the technology, want to be involved in talking to the people who are using it and then designing things and giving that feedback to the people that are building the products.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yes.
Let's start with, what is UX? Which is, by the way, a great question. So I like to think of UX as understanding the user experience. And that can take a bunch of different forms, right? We have UX designers who might be more skilled in the visual side of it, like understanding how people process information and we need to lay out information in a certain way, or interaction designers who are really thinking about how do we move people between like different stages of a product or anything like that too. Like how do we make sure that it's not overwhelming for them? And that could be like literally the colors on a page, or like the content that might be from a UX writer and everything too. And to more of what I do, which is research and understanding those mental models and the baselines of how our users, they're probably currently solving the problem without ML, right? And so how do they currently solve this problem? And how would an ML solution be a benefit to them if we're building an ML product, or if they're building ML, like what are they trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? How does our tool fit into their ML journey? Things like that too. But it is more than just visual design.
I think that is so cool and such a great and important part of the product process and the creation process. So I actually would love maybe for you to walk us through an example. And we were talking about Google Meets, Google Hangouts, which is a Google product. When you're on a call, you can hear the person who's speaking really, really well, but the surrounding sounds are cut out. And you mentioned that you were one of the team members to work and develop this technology. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, and then talk about your experience on the team and how you then, like, was there a point where you're like, hey, team, I'm getting feedback from certain people. Like, I would love to learn how you got the feedback and how that feedback then informed and to make the product better.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think this ties back to your other question, which I didn't answer before, but I will answer now.
Yes.
Your sandwich question about like, what was the turning point for me? I think that it was the building out the hearing aid algorithms and all this stuff too, where I was all like, audio is particularly interesting to me because visual, you can process a lot of things all at once, but audio, it takes a lot more time and it's a lot more patience and you have to listen to the thing all the way through. And so if we're building out these models, it's really important that we think about them from the beginning of how are these models going to be used and what are we actually training this data on? And so that gets back to your same story about the Google video calls. I want to give a big shout out to the larger team at Tensorflow Lite Micro and all of the on-device ML team. There were so many people behind the scenes, but really how that came to be was that there were these really awesome ML researchers. They're based out of Switzerland. So shout out to that team too. They're doing really, really amazing work. And they're like, we have this most awesome model that does noise cancellation. And we tried it and we're like, yeah, it does an awesome job. But like, what are the scenarios that people want to use it in and everything too? And so we really needed to understand one, like a baseline, like how are people making phone calls? Like when would they actually want this model? And that might be something too, where we might make custom models or something too. We might want to make custom models for the Google video call or Google Hangouts versus like the one that we launched, which is now called Clear Calling on the Pixel 7, right? There are times when you might want to like clone the model or make two different versions for two different reasons. And that's okay. But the same baseline technology is there. It's just making sure that we're training on the right data. So for that, to make the Clear Calling on the Pixel 7, one of the things that we did was actually send out like a survey to people just to understand, how do you make phone calls? When are you making them? What is the noise that's in the background? What are some times that have frustrated you? When have you wanted to make a phone call, but you couldn't? Like really understanding their setup. Are they using headset devices? I don't know. Like I don't want to assume what they're using or anything too. Are they all walking around with AirPods? Are they using speakerphones? And that's really where we got the feedback of like, oh, the most frustrating times are when I'm working from home. So my job depends on it. I need to sound professional. I need like clear audio. But there's like a lawnmower or an HVAC or a dog barking or something going on in the background. And that's the type of noise I don't want in my call. And so that was really great to make sure that we included that for our training data and everything like that too. So, and that shaped that model. And you can imagine with video calls and everything too, the other cool thing, and this is why I love on-device machine learning, is that it all works in the browser. Like it's not going to a server somewhere or even like a model processing it somewhere. It's happening in your browser. So it's privacy preserving. Happens real time. It's not draining your battery or draining your memory or anything too, whether that's on your phone or on your computer or in the web. So the fact that they were able to get the model so small, so quickly and get it out there and really help so many people who were during COVID, working from home and stuck at home and needing to still sound professional and everything too. I know I definitely used that technology when I was speaking at like virtual conferences and stuff. I'm like, this is amazing. This is so cool. So yeah, that was just kind of one of the ways that I was like, amazing ML model you guys have, ML research team. I'm with the Tensorflow Light Micro team, and like, how do we ensure that this is solving real people's problems? So that's the user experience behind it.
Oh, I love that. And your work is so critical because you are looking and you're surveying a variety of different users. So you're being inclusive of different people's preferences, different people's lifestyles, different people's needs. And so I think that's what's amazing about user experience and user research is that you get that pool, you get survey of all different kinds of people that can then be reflected in the technology that is built. So, Michelle, I just kind of want to, we've been to the past, we've explored Michelle as a performer, a neuroscientist, a machine learning expert, a user experience researcher. So, this has been quite the journey. And I wanted to ask, was there anything along the way, like at any point where you're like, what on earth am I doing? Imposter syndrome is huge. And, do you ever face that? And how do you bring such creativity and strength moving forward? And you make such an impact wherever you go. And so, it seems from the outside that you're like, you've got it all figured out and you're like leading with confidence. I mean, and is that the case, or what's been your internal journey?
Oh my gosh, Ashley, you are too kind. You're leading with confidence. No, I don't have anything figured out. So no, I guess I should say that. The one thing that I know to be true is like my guiding light for all of this is I just want to be kind and helpful and help people. Whether I was teaching music or in science or, when I was working with all those nonprofits about getting women into technology and underrepresented groups into technology, and that actually led me to my first job in tech, right? Mm-hmm. All along the way, I am learning, but I'm also helping people and I'm staying interested and true to what I'm interested in. And I feel very lucky that so many of those connection points were actually around something that I'm deeply passionate about, whether that's sound and music ML or audio ML, right?
Or people.
That's the other thing too. And that's something too that I used to say that I was like every 4 years, I would have like an existential crisis. Like, what am I doing? Is this it? Should I move on? Should I do something else? But luckily, the field of AI just keeps on changing. And in my opinion, getting more and more interesting. Like one, everything is so easy to use. Like, I think that so many people, like getting started is always a barrier to so many people. But I actually think that following some of these tutorials and intros and examples are way easier now than they used to be. And two, the tools are free. Like that is one of the amazing things. And this is why I love working at Google on so many of these tools is that they are free libraries. Colab is free. Like, I think that that's amazing. And to just get started coding and doesn't cost any money. It just costs you time and energy. And I think one of the best pieces of advice that I gave my students then, I give my students now, is work on something that you are passionate about. Work on something that you care about, and then it won't feel like something that is really hard or daunting because you have a preconceived notion about it too. The other thing that I really want to stress is like, we need people of all backgrounds, shapes, sizes, expertise. Like whoever you are, you have an expertise in something. Like whether that's like you're the best person in your neighborhood at gardening, or you are like an expert dentist. And I think that that's something that should be celebrated with a lot of these tools and AI becoming so much easier, is that how do we allow, just like with tone transfer, we've allowed the musicians of the different skill levels and expertise to bring their talents to the tool. And if they want, they can dive in deeper, but they don't need to understand how to code. You just need to understand what the code can do. And like, how can I interact with it? What are the inputs? What are the outputs? How do I potentially use this to solve a real problem? And like, that's a lot of what I do as a UX researcher. And that's what I really want to inspire people to do as they move on with their daily lives.
And you do that. You're a professor or faculty, adjunct faculty?
At lecture. Yeah.
You're a lecturer at the Stanford d.school, Stanford Design School. And so you not only teach all of these different classes, but you also work with this variety of student body and student population that are trying to work on to solve these different problems. And so I'd love for you to talk a bit about the different students that you have and what are some of the problems. You gave me some really good examples of some of the things that they're solving. And I want to highlight this because I think it speaks to your work as a user experience researcher working with ML, but it also speaks to the fact that machine learning is now becoming so prevalent, but it is more than anything a tool to help solve problems. And I think those that are in the fields really see the strength that it has to solve potential problems. And I think what's amazing about the work that you're doing as a lecturer and as a teacher is really trying to give, as I think you were saying, like photographers, researchers, teachers, fashion designers, the tools to say like, okay, you have this problem. Here's how you can use machine learning to help it so that it doesn't become a tool that's going to replace you, but a tool that's going to enable you, that's going to add value and be used as a way to really build out and improve on your work as opposed to replace it. And so I'd love for you to talk more about your students and maybe some examples that you can share about the problems that they're solving and how you're sort of bridging again that gap of machine learning, user experience, and problem solving.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, I love talking about my students in this course. So yes, I am a lecturer at the Stanford D.school. I teach a course on designing machine learning. It is aimed and intended for graduate students, although we let in a couple of final year seniors or co-term seniors and everything too. And it's actually a super interdisciplinary course. I've been teaching it for the last 5 years. We were one of the first of its kind to teach this interdisciplinary graduate level course. And really why I teach it is because I have taken all those machine learning courses where they're like 1,000 people plus, and it's like, look to your left, look to your right. Only one of you will be here by the final. And it's like, that is not the future of machine learning that I want. I know, it's awful. And so I really want the future of machine learning to be kind and approachable and helpful and collaborative. And I don't want people to feel like AI is something that happens to me, but more of, I understand roughly why the AI got this. How can I give it feedback? How can I change it? How can I help shape the future of AI to be more inclusive and approachable and everything too? So
and useful. Useful to me is like an individual and also right.
I want my mom to be able to code with AI. Also, my mom is just very cool and has all these other side hobbies. So she's already explored. She uses generative AI already to write her speech for her women's group that she gives out scholarships. I know she I think that is just awesome.
My mom's been using Midjourneys too because she's a graphic designer.
Love that.
And so she's been already trying to figure out how to use this too. So shout out to moms on this
shout
podcast
out to
and
moms.
dedicated. Hi mom.
Yeah. Yes, my mom just used. She's hosting a Derby day, Kentucky Derby themed, and she made a poster that is AI generate. She used AI generated tool. I don't know if it was Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, and she anyways, I just think that it's really sweet that moms are all using AI and not scared of it. I think that that's the future that I want. But my students, so we always have the most interesting students every year. Always we have some legal scholars or someone doing law stuff. This year we had someone who was in-house counsel for startups in France. They were normally doing EU type ML startup regulation stuff. We've had students before who are human rights lawyers who are doing stuff at the California-Mexico border. And they're I want to understand how facial recognition is being used. And so I'm doing this, fellowship here at Stanford for this year. And part of it is I want to understand AI and I want to understand how I can better help these people. Other students have been, you mentioned, the photographer, a National Geographic photographer who was interested in classifying venomous snakes or not, because they had all these pictures and accidentally made a hand detector because guess what? In photos of snakes, you're mostly holding the non-venomous ones. And so the ML classifier that they made on Teachable Machine. Yeah, right. So we were all this is a really accurate classifier. Why is that? And then we realized that it was classifying that the non-venomous ones were being held by hands, which I thought was awesome.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. And teachers who are interested in teaching ML and everything too, who are in the Masters of Design, LDT, Learning Design Technology, who have done work around they were from Ghana. And so what are the different Ghanaian fabrics and the prints and using computer vision and all this stuff. Anyways, I get constantly inspired by my students, and I think that it's really important. I want to share kind of a little bit about the philosophy of the class because, like I mentioned, you don't need to know how to code, but you need to understand what the code can do. Machine learning is probabilistic, and there will always be times when it fails. And I think that this becomes a design opportunity for UX designers, but also really anyone who's a part of the design process of these tools to really think about these are not, quote, edge cases. These are the cases that we have to be designing for. We can't always just design for the happy path when it comes to ML. And so how are you allowing every ML failure as an opportunity to design for feedback?
Well, and that's why your role is so crucial and why I think user experience and design, whether in any shape or form, is so crucial to making sure the technology that we interact with it's user-friendly, it's safe. People know that there's trust built there. So I think as the technology evolves and as, things continue to evolve, having those components that the user experience brings in to ensure that the way that we interact with the technology is kind, is approachable, is friendly, and is trustworthy, right? We know. I think that will be a big thing moving forward. So we are nearing the end of our time together, which I'm sad about because this has been such a great conversation. But I wanted to end with one of our favorite questions, which is, what is your favorite AI movie and or piece of literature?
Ooh, love that question because I know there's so many out there. Off the top of my head, the one that I'm thinking of is AI Weirdness by Janelle Shane. Have you heard of this?
No.
Do you know of it?
No. Tell me.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I am a huge fan of Janelle Shane. She is this amazing, she has a full different day job. I don't know what she does, but she writes about creating weird AI bots or AI things to do different things. So for instance, she once trained a neural network on a bunch of, the candy hearts for Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So she gave it all of these candy hearts for Valentine's Day and she let it generate new, what should new candy hearts say? And
my gosh. I love that.
I know. And it was so cute. It was hey, boo. And one was said, oi, just oi. And I was love this. There's different paint
Ted
colors.
Lasso. That's the quintessential. Really? Oh yeah. They always say oi.
Oh, I love it. I don't watch TV or movies or read books, but I read this book. I just think that it's very cute. And it also shows it's just a very approachable way to understand ML and AI. And she's collaborated with Ravelry, which is a knitting community. And I do a lot of crafts. Wow. Yep. And so she created AI generated knitting patterns and everything like that too. And so, and then knitters actually made those patterns, which I think is just so cool. And they don't make any sense. It's a sweater with 8 armholes and everything, right? Uh-huh. But only knitters can understand. Anyways, I think that is a really amazing way of thinking about AI. And there's just a lot of really just fun applications.
Nature.
Yeah. And it's again, getting back into what people are passionate about of course, people who knit and study knitting patterns really understand this. And they're this is weird, but I kind of love it. Or even the Valentine's Day heart candies. Those are super popular in the US and they're all over for Valentine's Day. And, so that's what brings us joy. There were a ton about bears. It's bear, be my bear. It's oh, that's kind of sweet, but AI, I guess. Yeah. Anyways, so totally. That is my favorite book. I'm going to put that out there for AI things. So if you want, go check that out. And then also check out Visual Blocks. We haven't really talked about it, but it's the paper that I was talking about from last week.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We'll make sure to link all these in the show notes. Definitely.
For sure. It's another free resource. You can just drag and drop and create ML pipelines and everything like that. Tools are getting easier. And I'm just excited to know what people make after all this. So
that's exciting. That's so exciting. Well, Michelle, what a pleasure. So great to talk to you and hear about your journey and all the amazing things you're building. And you're an inspiration for all of us to continue building technology that's kind and thoughtful and friendly. So Have a great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you so much for everyone who helps make these, Lawrence included. And just, I don't know, I'm just excited because you put these things out there and you're never quite sure who picks them up. So I'm excited for everyone who's listening and how it resonates with you. And I'm excited to see what you make.